KingofPodcasts.com proudly presents the Wrestling is Real podcast, because wrestling needs us. Welcome to episode 577 of the Wrestling is Real podcast. KOP here with you. Get ready to go ahead and come up to the 8th anniversary of the program here at WrestlingIsReal.com, which I'm glad I found the website and put that on there for all of you. Again, that's where you can find everything when it comes to the show. WrestlingIsReal.com. That's where it's all there. And I welcome you to go ahead and follow along with the past episodes as I followed through and talk more about the year in review. But again, I need to go and tie it in as we're going to talk a little bit about the early part of the pre-COVID pandemic and all the things that were going on as we started off the year 2020. But it will lead into more of a subject that's going on with a couple of current things that happened today, which we're going to talk about first. Now, there's two different ways I can go with this, but I think the one story I want to talk about first is I want to go and talk about Dynamite tonight, because Dynamite was very newsworthy. A lot of things happening. It was something out of the Eric Bischoff playbook. When I looked at what happened tonight on the program, watching AEW Dynamite, Wednesday Night Dynamite tonight, Sting returns at 61 years old. Again, just hearing Tony Schiavone going, "It's Sting!" Come on, that's pretty cool. There's a lot to be said about that. And Kenny Omega becoming the AEW World Heavyweight Champion, the third such champion in their company's history. And the tie-in with the former Cyrus, the former Jackal, Don Callis, who is one of the executives of Impact Wrestling, who has been associated and aligned with Kenny Omega over the last few months since Kenny Omega came in with a heel turn and became the cleaner once again. So, in a very shitty heel fashion, he wins the AEW World title, which is going to just bring up a whole lot here. Again, and Jon Moxley holding on to that belt for a long-ass time. I got to go look and see how far back he held the world title. But he held on to that belt for a long time. As I look at the Wikipedia, it officially says that Jon Moxley held the belt 277 days. That's a lot. It's been quite a while that he held on to it. He actually won it at Revolution, February 29th this year in Chicago, right before the pandemic. How long ago that was. But again, long run as champion, and now we have Kenny Omega here. Obviously, these two are going to be at odds with each other. This is a big storyline with Moxley and Omega coming up now. And more important than anything else is we're seeing the last part of everything here is because of Don Callis' association with Impact Wrestling. Kenny Omega is going to appear on Impact Wrestling this coming Tuesday. Therefore, Impact Wrestling is going to get a jolt of audience they have not had to Access TV, or any kind of jolt of interest that product has had in a while, even though they did bring some of the WWE layoffs from the pandemic. Okay, they did bring a number of those stars in, but again, they didn't make enough of a difference to really make a lot about Impact Wrestling's ratings. But for what it's worth, Kenny Omega going over to Impact Wrestling alongside Don Callis, that's important. There's something there to be said. I don't know what to think about what they're going to be doing here, but there's just no clue. But obviously there's an alliance here, something where Impact Wrestling and AEW are crossing over. I'm not sure where we go with this here, but again, Josh Matthews, I'm sure, will be absolutely excited. Kenny Omega, this is the AEW World Champion. He's on Impact Wrestling on Access TV. I can just hear that. And Madison Rayne just kind of going along. This is amazing. What is Kenny Omega doing here? I can just imagine. And don't get me wrong, I'm not giving him shit. I do watch Impact Wrestling. I've actually caught myself up to the point where I'm actually watching it live again. Catching myself away from news and stuff like that. Making time for more wrestling. What can I say? Except I need to watch MLW for this week, Fusion, which came out on YouTube, and the new NWA Shockwave show, which just came on. I actually got to watch both of those episodes when I get a chance. Now, let's go and start off with the top. Okay, from the very beginning, let's go to the big headlines to start here. Number one, I don't know when this announcement came out, but again, it's something out of it's a WCW Monday Nitro playbook kind of feel. Now, the WWE, I forget when he first entered in with his feud, and he came in all of a sudden and debuted with them. His debut was also quite good. Survivor Series 2014, so 6 years ago. And again, Sting was 55. And he hasn't looked much different than he does now. I mean, obviously the face paint, the look, he still has the look. But again, 61 years old, he's coming back now. I don't know what he's going to do in terms of in-ring wrestling or what he's able to do. I'm not sure. But it's interesting that AEW decides to go and bring the Stinger back in after all this time. It's just like bringing back Hulk Hogan or kind of bringing Undertaker in. It's the kind of idea where, the Sting setup, it's different than what it is would be with Hulk Hogan, which if anybody ever saw Hulk Hogan come into AEW, that would be like, oh God, here we go, Nitro all over again. Where's Bischoff? Where's Russo? We're getting the same bullshit over again. No. This is strategic to see Sting come in here. And I'm wondering what he's going to provide being part of this company. But apparently he signed a multi-year deal with AEW. This guy always finds work. Because remember, he was working for a long time, working over in Impact Wrestling for a long time, 2005 up until like 2016, something like that. Sting was working for a long time. I mean, there was a time where he stayed away. Remember, he stayed away for a number of years after the closing of WCW and never joined with the company in WWE, but he did come in 2014. So that's what it was, 2005 to 2014. And then Sting got hurt at the hands of Seth Rollins. And I don't know if he's in shape to come back and do anything. I'm not sure, but I never thought we would see him come back. But something prompted him to come back. I don't know what it is. So Winter is Coming was the episode. They obviously made it memorable. This was booked hot shot, but it wasn't. I mean, it kind of is, but it isn't. But it wasn't like anything didn't make sense. It wasn't but they gave us the Nitro style surprises. It's funny because I'm reading the Guy Evans Nitro book right now, and I forget if I'm at chapter 29 or something like that. I'm well into the book. I've gotten to the part where we've gotten past Goldberg, and they're on the way down. The book is fantastic. It's so detailed. If you haven't had a chance to read the book, I would highly recommend it. The book on Nitro by Guy Evans, it's quite good. There's just so much about that comes out of it that's really, there's a whole lot to be said. Again, the book is called Nitro, The Incredible Rise and Inevitable Collapse of Ted Turner's WCW. So I just caught that now. I wanted to go listen to the audiobook, so I'm going through it, and it's quite good. So now, a lot of interviews being done with that as well. So again, I would just recommend the book. It's actually quite good. I'll tell you what it's like after I finish it. But again, reading through that book and going through the history of WCW and thinking about Sting and how ironic Sting is here. It's really amazing. So we see this here, and Sting at age 71, Steve Borden, coming back into the fold. He confronts Cody, confronts Darby Allin, but nothing more than that. He's expected to speak next week, so he'll be cutting a promo, which should be good. It will be interesting to see what he comes up with when he comes out. So in the announcement was made by AEW. Winter's Coming was already guaranteed to be the biggest episode of AEW Dynamite. The debut of a wrestling legend, Sting, took the world by surprise. Widely regarded as one of the greatest professional wrestlers ever, his jaw-dropping appearance at Daly's Place in Jacksonville, Florida, sent electricity through the crowd throughout the wrestling world when he stepped in the ring. AEW has confirmed tonight they have officially signed Sting to a full-time multi-year agreement. Tony Khan says the surprise introduction of Sting was a great way to celebrate our biggest episode of Dynamite yet. When AEW launched, I was ecstatic to bring wrestling back to TNT after a very long absence. Sting defeated the legendary Ric Flair in the final wrestling match to be shown on TNT for more than 18 years until the debut of Dynamite in 2019. Almost 2 decades later, it's such a thrill to welcome Sting to AEW and bring him back home to TNT. Good entrance. Nice way to set him up. Again, Sting is Sting. And he has been presented very much, when you see him in Impact Wrestling, you saw him in WCW, or you see him in AEW now, you see who he is. I mean, it's the familiar face. No true change of the gimmick, which works. And I think everybody's done the right thing on how they present Sting. I mean, really, we like the character. It's much like how he is not the level of Undertaker. I wouldn't say it's so much that, but again, Sting has just been a different type. But again, Sting is just so, for older fans, it just means so much. And I think that some of the mainstays that would watch TNA or that watch WWE and they're the older crowd, they're going to want to tune into AEW to find out what Sting says. They're going to bring him out. That'll get some interest. I mean, how much of an interest there could be in a Sting and how much can Sting provide? Well, I think about it like this. With Sting, it's not so much his in-ring persona that's going to help a lot. Sting provides so much in his ability to hopefully mentor and to hopefully just provide some leadership. I mean, just AEW has done a thing where I've always talked about what WWE should have done is to really incorporate some of their legends to really help out into building out some of the stars that are out there. And we've seen that quite a bit with some of the stars we have so far. Chris Jericho has been doing yeoman's work trying to get stars and build them up. Really solidifying Jon Moxley as a main eventer, winning the belt over Chris Jericho, being a long-term champion, being the first champion, and Jon Moxley being the one to, defeat him flat out at Revolution was important. And then, the building up the inner circle and trying to build up stars like Sammy Guevara and Proud and Powerful with Santana and Ortiz. You see what they've been doing. And you see there are other stars where, you look at what Tully Blanchard provides to FTR or hopefully at some point to Shawn Spears. If you see what Arn Anderson's offering in terms of Cody, right? And you're just seeing, Vicky Guerrero with Nyla Rose, and there's so many others. We can give examples. There's just associations with associations with associations. It's interesting. It's a lot of mini factions that you see right now with AEW. And, it feels like it's a very loose, very comfortable, creative space to work. I feel like the AEW has the environment where they get to do a lot of work. And of course, they are getting some stars over. Kenny Omega right now, to become the champion is big. And as we already knew, Kenny Omega was always supposed to be a big star. He should have been a big star when he first came in. Kind of a little bit of a stutter step. But now where we're at is pretty good. So I like all of that where we are now when it comes to what AEW is doing. Sting is just another great. Oh, then of course Jake Roberts with Lance Archer, but again, that hasn't taken off the ground yet either. There's a lot of stars. We're seeing them in the mix. They're not getting overexposed. Obviously, what Cody, the Young Bucks, Omega, and the others are doing is they're doing a good job of trying not to overexpose. Because they have quite a few stars they have around. But again, they're not working house shows. They're not doing a lot of other things. You get a lot of people that are working on dark. So a lot of, matches where you're building up stars, bringing them up to the top. So Powerhouse Hobbs gets into play. Or Leslie Hirsch comes into play to go ahead and take on Britt Baker earlier tonight. So you have like new stars coming into play, new faces, there was the tag teams that they've been bringing out the last couple of weeks. I haven't gotten to really all the names of them. But again, there's a lot of new faces, a lot of interesting different matchups. Obviously, AEW has no problem working with other companies and other organizations. They didn't have a problem having Thunder Rosa come out. NWA working alongside to let Thunder Rosa go ahead and defend her title in AEW or go after the AEW title itself. I mean, that's really wonderful. And Impact Wrestling, we haven't seen the crossover here yet, except for Don Callis. Don Callis obviously has a relationship with Kenny Omega. There's obviously some good rapport going on here where Don Callis is getting the olive branch here. This connection is very interesting how it's being put together. And Impact Wrestling getting an opportunity to go ahead and work with AEW, where AEW now got the momentum. And I think for AEW, for Tony Khan, and for the organization here, they're doing the same thing what WWE did, back in the 2000s or back in the late 90s by offering ECW an olive branch. Hey, we'll work with you. And it's also where we've seen that kind of camaraderie, that style of camaraderie going on with other stars. Remember, like you're seeing MLW stars working in AEW, where you saw Brian Pillman Jr. coming into work, or you're seeing MJF working in other organizations. It's obvious that AEW is not trying to be like the exclusive brand and trying to do things where they're doing what WWE doesn't do. They don't want to be WWE, and they don't want to be what WCW was or make the mistakes that WCW did, because they're learning from WCW. And I can see that happening. And for the most part, I want to see what the rating looks like when they pop and how they saw Sting come out tonight, because that obviously got some people rolling. It's like, what the hell? I mean, I'm wondering what the head-to-head rating will look like if NXT comes up and Sting all of a sudden comes out on TV. Like, let me tell you, it's going to make people take notice. Now, of course, the WWE faithful are going to complain and bitch and moan. Oh, what the hell Sting doing out there? 61-year-old Sting. He's not Undertaker, okay? We just saw a real star Undertaker. He wasn't really in WWE. He was in there for a cup of coffee. And what did he do? He got hurt, right? I got it. My fellow wrestling podcast brethren, yeah, I know you're going to say that. But again, I'm on an island. I don't associate myself with other shows. Not so much anymore. Because I don't make the time to go and listen to the podcast as much as I used to. It just kind of dropped off. No disrespect to the shows I would normally shout out on the air. It's just that I'm not doing that. And, it's not like I need to do anything like that. It's like I'm trying to get some kind of a rub. No. But I think, obviously, we're going to hear some flack about people saying, oh, why Sting over here? Oh, why Sting? Well, you know what? Again, it's what he can provide. Sting is not going to be able to come in like an Impact Wrestling and still be the top dog. But he's got name, he's got recognition still, and he still looks like he does. He still looks like the Sting that we've seen out there for a long time. All right, he looked like the Sting that we would see in WCW for years. Or certainly in TNA. That's where we saw him at. And so it's where we are. I mean, that's fine. I think that works out for everybody. So now, I think what it comes down to is, it's the creativity that's there. There's an opening door of creativity. A lot of things that are being done to kind of build things out. I mean, obviously, the Inner Circle, man, think about it. We have a breakup next week. Now, is this all kind of hot shock? I don't know. But everything's kind of building to a purpose. Again, this company does long-term booking very well. You have some really interesting storylines right now, and they do build up a lot of storylines, and a lot of different stories are coming into play, and they do get woven out very well. We saw how Full Gear came out. It was really great. Again, I praised the hell out of that pay-per-view. It was wonderful. As for what they're doing now, it's just Sting coming back, Kenny Omega becoming new world champion. It's a lot to give out on free TV. But again, Winter is Coming was made to be a big show, to be a big pay-per-view, to really get some people talking. They did it. They accomplished that. And again, they're not watering down their pay-per-views. Again, they're doing what WCW. They're not doing what WCW did. They're not doing 12 pay-per-views a year. You're doing 4. And they're stacking the pay-per-views, putting a big price tag on them, and making sure they're paying them off. So I appreciate that. And then, I mean, you just see other things that are going on here. It's interesting. I mean, is Sting, past his prime? Yeah. But can he contribute? Can he still offer some value to this company? Absolutely. Again, you're seeing what they're doing with Tully Blanchard and Jake the Snake Roberts and Vicky Guerrero and, Arn Anderson. They're offering something to the table. It's what it is. they have quite a system to bring in new talent, and they're bringing in new talent and getting some stars that are really interesting and putting them in the ring with legitimate matches. Again, you put Powerhouse Hobbs. This guy was out of nowhere for the last few months, and all of a sudden, he kind of attaches himself to Jon Moxley. All of a sudden, he gets joined in with Team Taz. Oh my God, forget Taz. Taz is great. Think about what they're doing here. All these different stars they have with great voice ability, great promo ability, great promo cutting. Among the stars that they have that can also promo cut themselves are the talent. You give it to a Ricky Starks, or you give it to an Eddie Kingston, or a Jon Moxley. I mean, shit. So much good. I mean, promo ability, MJF and Jericho. Jesus, man, you got so much. AEW has a lot of different things, a lot of different puzzle pieces. So it's not anything where there are certain things that have some uniformity that keep you back watching the show each week. It's not like you have only a small group of stars that are at the top and you're watching them every week. No, there are stars that you know or recognize, but it's like it's a very interesting system in how they do this. Where it's not like they're building around a handful of stars. They just have a lot of different wrestlers that are out there, and they just, they shine certain stars at certain times, and they just do with others at others. Like, I don't know. It's just their mid card means something. That's what's the most amazing part, is that they have a main event that's very significant, but their main event is almost at the level around the main. The mid card is very near the main event level. I mean, they do intertwine some real storylines. Miro right now with Orange Cassidy, Sean Spears attacking. It's just a lot of these other storylines and people having their feuds with other people, and you're seeing that, and it's just apparent. So that's a lot to be said there, and the creativity that's been going on now with AEW, it's quite fascinating. On the other side of WWE, it's a different story. And one of the things that really stand out about the creativity in the heyday of WWE would be one of the stars that really was just the right hand to Vince McMahon for so many years, especially when Vince McMahon Jr. bought the company off of Vince McMahon Sr., took the extra W off, and made the World Wrestling Federation. I mean, one of the pinnacle players responsible for the success of so many things in the World Wrestling Federation and into the Attitude Era of WWE and even to today was Pat Patterson. There's a lot to be said about the guy, regardless of what you think. There's a whole lot to be said about Pat Patterson that is without saying. So it's a proper time to tribute to Pat Patterson. Now, I want to take a little bit and take a story from ESPN that really gives the story about Pat Patterson. He's basically been called one of the best finishers in the wrestling business. This guy knows how to create really great finishes to a match that really will stand out for the test of time. So WWE Hall of Famer Pat Patterson died today at the age of 79, the company confirmed. Born in Montreal in 1941, he entered the wrestling business in 1958 in Canada, made his way to the AWA, where he and the crippler Ray Stevens became tag team champions. He joined the World Wrestling Federation in 1979, became their first ever intercontinental champion. So he stands in history of that company. He won the title in a tournament in Rio de Janeiro. He would hold the title initially for 233 days. He was also in the contributions to one of his most lasting contributions to wrestling would be the Royal Rumble match. He created it. He's responsible for that. 1988 it first came out. It is a yearly tentpole match for WWE. It's what we look forward to every January. One of the best things the company has. No matter how shitty the talent might be, that format people love every year. We'll talk about Royal Rumble. We'll talk about what happened this year with Edge's return, which really made one of the biggest moments that we had in the company this year. Talk about a return. That was a hell of a return we had to this year. He's also the first gay superstar in wrestling. Says, quote, the more I kept running the idea over my mind, the more it took shape. He talks about the Royal Rumble, and I was sure I was onto something. I felt that every instinct in my body told me it would work. So I finally brought the idea to Vince. He laughed at the concept first, saying that an hour was way too long to keep fans interested. The first Royal Rumble was a success, but until it was over, we didn't really know if it would work. I know it was a unique idea, but until a crowd responds, it's hard to know for sure. In 1981, Patterson and fellow Hall of Famer Sergeant Slaughter had a bloody rivalry that culminated in multiple boot camp matches across live events and an alley fight at Madison Square Garden, which the Wrestling Observer appointed Match of the Year in 1981. After retiring from the ring in 1984, he remained ringside doing commentary and then moved to a backstage role, often as McMahon's right-hand man. I remember hearing the story about how they would just take, a whiteboard, and Patterson and McMahon could go sit at like a poolside at Vince's house in Stamford, Connecticut, or Greenwich, or whatever it was. And they would go ahead and plot out the year and storylines, like the Hogan storylines. Who would take him on? How would WrestleMania get booked for that year? That's what they did. Pat Patterson was part of that. Simple booking, simple creative. But they had a way to get to a story. It was amazing. He was also recognized widely as one of the most creative minds in pro wrestling, particularly with inventive finishes to matches. A lot of people reacted to him passing away today. Shame, man, I cannot express how crushed I feel right now with the loss of Pat Patterson. True member of my family, mentor, and dear friend. Love you, Pat. Godspeed. John Cena writes, loss is incredibly difficult. Those we love are only truly gone if we stop caring. Pat Patterson lived life as it should be lived, with passion, love, and purpose. He helped so many and always entertained with a story or joke. He will live on in my life always. Love you, Patrick. Mick Foley saying, I love the man. I can listen to his stories for hours. One of the all-time great wrestlers, one of the great minds of the business, and a dear friend. Roman Reigns. Pat worked alongside my family for years and was always invested in my success. Brilliant mind for the business and always ready to make a joke at your expense. Rest in peace, Pat. God bless. Jim Ross, who mentioned him on AEW programming tonight, said, true legend of the pro wrestling business, a wonderful mentor who taught me so much. R.I.P. old friend. Moving along, Bailey would send points. Pat Patterson. This will be our Iron Sheik. We'll talk about Pat Patterson. I don't know what to say other than I love you. You have a beautiful mind for this business and beautiful heart for this world. My heart is broken. God bless you and your family. Thank you for your friendship. Kurt Angle, very saddened to hear about the passing. He had an infectious personality where you always wanted to be around him. Cody Rhodes, in all the conversations I had with him, there was an underlying thread, and that was the brotherhood, sisterhood throughout the locker room and how much we were a team. Loved life and lived it hard. He was incredibly loved and will be missed. Charles Robinson, the referee, one of the greatest minds of the movement and just an all-around great guy. I will miss him and his karaoke. Eric Bischoff, coming to 2002 in WWE was a unique situation. Pat was one of the first to go out of his way and genuinely make me feel at home. We share many hour stories and yes, a cocktail or two. R.I.P. Pat. A JBL, the incredible times we had traveling the world, watching him sing karaoke, telling stories, talking golf, are something I'll treasure forever. Love you, Pat. R.I.P. Legend. There's a lot to be said about what he offered to the business. And of course, this is an ally for Vince McMahon that is sorely needed right now in this company because they're hurting on a lot of different things. WWE actually gave a statement. They said that a true trailblazer in the industry, he was linked to many firsts in sports entertainment throughout his storied career. IC title reign, creation of Royal Rumble match, career spanning 6 decades, the Renaissance man left an indelible mark on the industry in the ring, on the microphone, and behind the scenes. In his 25 plus years with WWE, Patterson was synonymous with making history. His name will forever be revered in WWE lore. And they mentioned a book about his life, his autobiography, and they offered condolences, of course. So yeah, it's amazing what goes on with Pat Patterson, what was being said about him. It was, it was an interesting character. Offered a lot. So it's unfortunate to hear everything going on. Triple H and Stephanie made comments. Yeah, there's a lot of people that gave the comments today, obviously. Ric Flair writes, a great wrestler. He and Ray were second to none. A fabulous mind, caring and thoughtful, always had a smile on his face. Just to list a few of many. The last thing I can remember him saying to me is, she is so damn good, Ricky. Are you sure she's your daughter? I love it. Pat Patterson, there you go. So he will be missed, and unfortunately, that's a star that's a major factor with Vince McMahon, where he doesn't have those kind of guys right now that can help him out with that classic history to really put things out there. I mean, he has the likes of Bruce Prichard to work off of, when really Vince McMahon doesn't have that many old hands that could really help him out. And honestly, when you think about the early days of the rock and wrestling era, some of those people that he had around, they're no longer around. I mean, when you think about it, the Attitude Era, you had Bruce Prichard and Jim Ross and Pat Patterson, and you had, others that were kind of around within that circle, the Jim Cornettes of the world. But there were also certain people that he had around that were not really a part of his circle, because obviously Jim Cornette was not really a part of it. He became a part of it in some of his runs because he ran Ohio Valley Wrestling, or when he was not in WCW or NWA or wherever else. Bruce Prichard would be in and out of different organizations. But again, for the early end of the World Wrestling Federation, and the people that were there for him, and the creative flow that was able to offer the real classic wrestling minds, he doesn't have many of those people. Bruce Prichard kind of fits that role because he was around for a long time. But Bruce Prichard right now is at odds. Reading a story from yesterday from PW Insider, they're reporting that current creative falls directly in the hands of Vince McMahon and Bruce Prichard. And that PW Insider noted that someone in the company described Prichard as the most powerful person in the company who's not part of the McMahon family. If you are a fan of what the company's doing lately, you're not a fan, or if you aren't a fan, then you can point to Prichard as the person responsible for what you're seeing on Raw and SmackDown. Of course, McMahon still has the final say with everything, but Prichard is very much the gospel for McMahon, they're saying. And there's said to be a lot of frustration and heat with Prichard being expressed privately among the talent. WrestlingNews.co talking about wrestlers have been frustrated. They've been hearing with their lack of TV time. Unfortunately, with so many people on the main roster, they're not going to find time for everyone. And that frustration is with Prichard, but others have privately expressed frustration with the company in general for hiring so many people just to stack their roster. And this is a result of them trying to keep talent away from AEW and other organizations. WWE is trying to stay on an island once again, and it's amazing how things just kind of, history repeats itself. And to think that Vince McMahon would not realize that history is repeating itself again. I hate to say this, but at the moment, AEW is starting to live its 1994 moment. They did start themselves back up. They're not so much what WCW was, but again, it's like where Eric Bischoff had the company in 94 to 90, actually more like in the 95, because Dynamite becomes their Nitro. It's the same thing. We're in the middle of Nitro starting to pick itself up and take off. And WWE, under Bruce Prichard's tutelage at that time, was starting to hurt with a lot of characters. They're hurting right now in the same vein once again. But this is a much more powerful company than ever was. This is not where Vince McMahon could ever fall and lose his money. No. But again, the creativity is lacking. The momentum is with AEW now. Now, they are doing some things where some shows are, obviously the SmackDown show is showing the best of what the company can do. But the Raw show is not. It's hurting badly. when I try to watch Raw every week, it really is, it's cringeworthy. I almost get a headache watching that show because it is getting pretty bad. Some of the things that we're doing tonight or this week, Elias and Jeff Hardy basically banging his head on the stairs. We got a badly, okay, everybody talks about, again, another Hardy in another risky table spot. Remember we talked about how Matt Hardy went off of 2 tables and then he basically knocked his head on the concrete. Same thing with Jeff Hardy right now in this match where he's, got a table on the corner of the ring and the steel stairs are right next to him and he bangs his head on the steel stairs. Incredible. I mean, so if you're going to go and criticize AEW for the lack of follow-up on Jeff Hardy doing his recklessness in the ring, the same thing you said about how you talk about Matt Hardy, same thing can go with Jeff Hardy. It is the same thing. And it's ironic it's both Hardys still doing their thing where they just continue to put themselves in danger. Just saying. Okay, so Alexa Bliss with Randy Orton. That was a good sub. That was a decent segment. I like the story they're giving where they're showing that Bray Wyatt now has a weakness in Alexa Bliss. But I appreciate that. That's good. And the transformation of Alexa Bliss has really been great. I love this character now with Bray Wyatt. She's brought new life to the Bray Wyatt character. And I hate to say it, but she's now starting to outshine Bray Wyatt. And that's, I don't know what to do with that. Symphony of Destruction match, Jeff Hardy and Elias. This was, again, they used all different weapons. It was a horrible match. We've seen the Broadway match. Again, Elias gets all these bad matches with instruments. Is that the best they could do with him? Shit. But obviously this match was meant to go and blow off a feud that was a really shitty SmackDown feud. Ricochet is continuing to get jobbed out on Raw for whatever reason. Sheamus is now a face, or we think, because we don't know if he's going to still go ahead and if they're teasing a possible heel turn on Drew McIntyre. I'm not sure what to think. I'm not sure what to think of Sheamus at all. Again, they bring him out here. He looks like Irish bully, like working at something out of like Peaky Blinders in the 20s or something like that. I don't get what the whole story with that is. But they're trying to show they're a little bit of friends. They're trying to use something with this. So Drew McIntyre and Sheamus, they might try to put some storyline with them. Not sure where they're going to go with that. The Asuka Lana, Shayna Baszler, Nia Jax thing. Everything with Lana and the table, it sucks. I hate it all. But now, Lana and Asuka now will probably get a chance to go after the tag titles. Like it means anything. Cedric Alexander against Xavier Woods. This was fine. Xavier Woods is now going to host on the new G4, the return of G4, which is interesting. Riddle, I'm not sure what to think of the character. Building him up now as some kind of it's like some country bumpkin Beverly Hillbillies kind of feel to it. That's what I feel like. It sucks. But again, maybe it'll get over. It'll work. I'm not sure. But AJ Styles wins. Number 1 contendership. So we'll get Styles and McIntyre coming up at TLC. And again, it really is tough of what they're trying to do with the matches. Again, not much to really take much of. But any which way, they're having issues right now. And it wasn't like we were having these problems before. But when you look at what was going on beforehand, as we go into our year in review and start going into the years of the whole year in a perspective, we look at what's going on. It's quite interesting. Now, we start off with January 1st, 2020 was the first episode. It was episode 507, talking about the Lana and Bobby Lashley wedding. Because remember, that happened at the end of last year. And it was just so much to deal with. It was just, oh my God, it was so annoying to watch all that. Lana was a different character back then, and how much she's like changed now. Like, there's not much of a change. She's kind of just been this like stagnant character that's out here that we're supposed to feel some kind of a sympathy for, because she's been thrown through a table like 6 times in a row. Well, Bobby Lashley got nothing from that storyline with Rusev, who's gone. And in a year, Rusev has become Miro with different hair and now hangs around with Kip Sabian and Penelope Ford. And it looks like they're trying to do something with they were kind of doing something a little bit with the Dynamite Diamond match, right? And they did a thing where, Miro's now like becoming more of a dominant force. They're going to go after Orange Cassidy, starting a mid-card feud with him right now. Miro, I'm not sure what to think of the character yet. Nothing is really kind of built out. We need more layers to this character to find out what he's really about. So it was that to deal with. And then Brock Lesnar has Wrestle Kingdom, and we're looking at that. Oh, actually, let me go back beforehand. Hold on. Let me get to... At this point, I said that WWE had actually jumped the shark with the Lana Lashley wedding segment. And I said this at the time. Creative just landed an all-time rock-bottom main event moment. But hey, NXT's winning the war on Wednesday nights for AEW, right? This is what we're supposed to be arguing about with WWE in 2020. But hey, go ahead and brag about NXT beating AEW, right? Because NXT was still holding on, and they were winning some of the matches. They were winning some of the weekends, some of the Wednesdays, right? I also wrote, WWE is in the major leagues, right? Every wrestling star hasn't had a relevant career unless they've been in WWE, right? Give me a break. And that's when I really just felt like, I just kind of got off a certain level with everybody. Just, the constant talk from the other podcasters about having to go and just, having the feeling that WWE really can't do any wrong. They complain about their own product, about the product they are so loyal to, but the loyalty to a fault. And assuming that an AEW or an Impact Wrestling or an MLW or an NWA in some way, shape, or form, if they work together collectively, or if they're just working all together and they're just building up their own momentum on their own products, tells you something's going on here. And again, we're moving towards where AEW is giving an assist to Impact Wrestling. If there's some kind of a, crossover that happens here, I'm all in for it. I'm interested. Obviously helps Impact Wrestling a lot. And I want to know what it's all about. I want to know how they're going to put this together, how they're going to put this out, and how they're going to really use this. So Brock Lesnar was announced to be the first entrant into the Royal Rumble. Everybody was looking at what that was going to be. Obviously, that was the bill for Drew McIntyre to go ahead and get the start that he has. So far this year, I can see, yes, Drew McIntyre absolutely has become a star this year. This has been his year. He is now a main eventer after all this time, which is good for him. Also, I was getting ready to go and talk about the Hard to Kill card and Tessa Blanchard and Sami Callihan. What a difference a year is for Tessa Blanchard. Remember when we were talking about her? She was the first ever Impact Wrestling World Champion. Female winning the world title in a major wrestling promotion. You might want to call it a major wrestling promotion, but to me it was significant to see Tessa Blanchard where she was at, where she's gone. She's not even around now. January 13th, she wins the Impact World title. We talked about Hard to Kill. And the matches we had on that was really wonderful. At this point, we also talked about how Brian Cage finished his Impact run, moved to AEW. He hasn't made major steps yet, but he has been significant so far. Made him FTW World Champion. Taz is building him up. And everything's just getting a slow burn on all these different stars, all these different factions we have as well. So I really like what was going on with Tessa Blanchard at the time back in January. And then we talked about January 16th, episode 510. I talked about how AEW was getting an extended and expanded commitment by TNT and Warner Media to go head-to-head. And this is what Variety.com had reported at this time. AEW is expanding its footprint. It has signed a new multi-year deal with TNT that will keep it on the air through 2023. In addition, AEW would launch a new weekly show to go alongside its already launched series Dynamite, airing Wednesdays on the Capler. So we're still hearing that new show is supposed to be coming up sometime next year. And then we also learned about the passing of Rocky Johnson at this time. We move along, and I was all talking about Royal Rumble and who would be the new contender for Brock Lesnar. Because again, he held the belt stagnant, which I can't say much about what there's any stagnation right now on the world title picture in WWE. Because I like the champions at the top right now. Drew McIntyre, WWE champion, Roman Reigns, Universal title, amazing. They did accomplish two big stars they built this year. Roman Reigns has been pushed up now as an amazing heel character. Amazing heel character. His best work. This was exactly what Roman Reigns needed. And I got to give credit if Paul Heyman was part of this, if Roman Reigns was part of it. This storyline, and obviously Jey Uso is going to get built into a star as a result of this. This is happening. We feel it. It's totally happening right now. It's been wonderful. Really great stuff right now with Jey Uso. And really great stuff with Roman Reigns. So I give all the credit in the world that with all that was said and done, WWE right now is building stars. Drew McIntyre is an older star, but at least he's now a main eventer. He finally accomplished what he wanted to do a long time ago. So an SCW star finally gets done good after all this time. He can finally say, I made it. And, he still has quite a bit of time to go and be up there at the top. But again, he is much older now than he was. But not much older than he really is. He's only 35. So he's had some time he's been around. But again, he's still in his prime right now. 35 years old. Drew McIntyre is a star. Roman Reigns being at, 34, I think it is. He's a star as well. Great for them. It's working out. So you have stars right now that I must admit for WWE. Roman Reigns is also 35. One thing I can be saying, I got to praise that. And we'll talk about this later. We will continue to talk about the rise of Roman Reigns and Drew McIntyre throughout the year, which is the underlying theme of the success that WWE did find this year. I have to give them credit. Roman Reigns and Drew McIntyre are bona fide stars right now. I do not rule that out at all. Drew McIntyre and Roman Reigns are definite stars. I even like what they did with Drew McIntyre right now with the kilt, giving the full-fed Scottish, the real, giving with a sword. Like, I just like the whole build of that, rest of that character. They have two solid main event stars right there. And obviously, Sasha Banks, I've talked about for a long time. I wish that Asuka, we could get her off of the face paint and get rid of the Great Muta kind of feel to it. Kind of think that's done. She's a face now. Maybe it's just time to go and change that up and kind of just, let her kind of evolve the look a little bit. Moving along into January, we talked about Edge emerging at Royal Rumble after a decade-long retirement. We had Charlotte Flair working into a possible rematch with Becky Lynch. And like I said, Drew McIntyre, he was given the crown. He was given the ball to run with it to become a spot to go ahead and take on Brock Lesnar down the line. Winning the Royal Rumble, or getting into where he was with the Royal Rumble match, and really being put out in a very well positioned storyline to start things off. A well positioned angle to start off to get Brock Lesnar and Drew McIntyre together in the ring eventually at WrestleMania. Significant at the most. And then we talked about WrestleMania season rolling after the Royal Rumble. Where are the ratings? Why are the French fans not engaging? And that even though the Raw after Royal Rumble got a slight rise in ratings on Monday, it's apparent that folks outside the wrestling bubble are not excited about the earlier card indications. And there was a lot of issues where you had suspensions, replacements, schedule changes, and returns abound in WWE during that time at the end of the Royal Rumble time. And then we talked about Killer Cross signing. And unfortunately, talk about a star that could have really been helpful right now in WWE, unfortunately, he just had, as this injury that is going to keep him out for a while. It's very unfortunate and very untimely that it happens. And that SmackDown and Raw, we're dealing with already rough ratings so far. And then we talked about the wellness suspensions of injuries, and there was a lot of corporate shakeup in Stanford when we talked about how Eric Bischoff is no longer a factor, and the same thing with Paul Heyman being taken out of the picture altogether. Then we moved along to February 13th, and the WrestleMania season getting weakened because they had to submit to the Saudi princes and put together a big show for Super Showdown. Which, by the way, still did happen. We were only weeks away from the pandemic really taking hold at this time. And remember we had the part where, Teddy Hart went to jail, right? The Hall of Fame would honor Bella Twins and Jushin Thunder Liger, which we never got to see happen. Shayna Baszler, remember when we had her in the storyline where they brought her in and she was sucking Becky's blood? Remember when we had that? Horrible. And remember the XFL was going on at this time, and it was doing pretty well. People were starting to enjoy the XFL. It just got started, and people were starting to enjoy it. And then NXT TakeOver Portland, giving the best that NXT could give their fans, but not offering the future that WWE and WrestleMania needs. I mentioned that. And, just going so far to try to really build up. And again, we're going to do War Games coming up this weekend, which we'll talk a little bit about. They're going to have that coming up. And all of a sudden, okay, more extreme stuff going on in these matches. I'm like, what are you going to do to build these up? Because NXT has lost its luster this year. It's unfortunate that it has, but I really feel like it has. It's not good to have it happen, but what can you do? Episode 517 was February 27th, and I said the WrestleMania 36 card was already getting weak. At the time we were talking about this, we saw Drew McIntyre would take on Brock Lesnar, Goldberg would take on Roman Reigns, but then remember, Roman Reigns as a face. Rhea Ripley versus Charlotte Flair for the NXT Women's title, where Charlotte Flair won the Royal Rumble and decided to go to the NXT champion instead. Becky Lynch versus Shayna Baszler. Edge versus Randy Orton, AJ Styles versus Undertaker, John Cena versus Bray Wyatt, and Kabuki Warriors would be defending the World Tag Team titles. And it is what it was. And then we remember talking about the matches for Super Showdown. Bray Wyatt versus Goldberg, what a horrible match. New Day versus John Morrison and The Miz. Roman Reigns and Baron Corbin in a steel cage. Ugh. The Tawake Mountain Trophy Gauntlet match. Oh, that's memorable. Seth Rollins and Buddy Murphy as World Tag Team Champions. Remember that? As Raw Tag Team Champions over the Street Profits. Bayley defending the SmackDown Women's title over Naomi. Humberto Carrillo versus Angel Garza. Remember those guys being around somewhere? Whew. Viking Raiders versus Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson. Remember what that was like? Whew. And then we talked about how we had Revolution. Again, there was so much going on right prior to the pandemic. So the wrestling was so hot right then. So much action going on. It was so busy. Jericho and Moxley for the world title. MJF versus Cody. And the big blow off in that feud, which was really an amazing screw job by MJF, which was quite memorable. Kenny Omega and Adam Page versus the Young Bucks for the AEW World Tag Team titles. Chris Statlander, we haven't heard from her for a while, but she's been hurt, I think, right? And Pac taking on Orange Cassidy at that time. Again, Orange Cassidy been building a lot. Mimosa Mayhem match, the TNT title match. Orange Cassidy put a lot of time behind, really trying to build him up. Quite interesting how they did that. And then I talked about the Super Showdown, sucking up to the Saudis, and we talked about AEW Revolution. And like I said, there was a whole lot to be said about it. It was quite interesting. It was a good night, nevertheless. And then I mentioned that WrestleMania 36 is being propped up by part-timers. Again, the same thing that goes along. Nothing new. And it was. You think about it, John Cena was part of it. You Goldberg, Brock Lesnar, Edge. I mean, there was just so much going on where we just saw, the constant propping up. Now, WrestleMania that's coming up this year, they'll be able to have some good WrestleMania matches, I would imagine, with Drew McIntyre and Roman Reigns at the top. I could see that. If Sasha Banks continues to be SmackDown Women's Champion, sure. I don't know if you're going to keep Asuka as Raw Women's Champion or if there's somebody else that goes to the spot. I'm still intrigued by Carmella coming into the play right now to take on Sasha Banks and what they're doing with that character. Again, SmackDown has all the momentum. They're just doing things really well right now. That show in particular is getting some interest. And for 2021, what does Big E become out of all this? I think that's another guy that's going to get built up. It's just a matter of time for him. But they're kind of leaving him right now in the mix with the Street Profits. But obviously they're going to have to break him off. Big E's going to have to get something big pretty soon down the line. Then I'm talking about Elimination Chamber, all gimmick, no game changes for WrestleMania. And I talked about how it was just a gimmick pay-per-view. I remember the women's Elimination Chamber just not being that good with Peyton Royce and Billie Kay in there was just horrible. And then we get to the point about WrestleMania 36. March 12th would have been my first episode as we were getting ready for the pandemic. Because at this point, I had already started staying home. At this point, almost 9 months now. This is where I decided to go ahead and stop because this is where the pandemic started coming into play. And I mentioned that KOP looks under the pressure of being created to cancel WrestleMania. Maybe it wouldn't hurt. And they had not said anything right away about if the WrestleMania would be canceled. They were still kind of holding on for hope that maybe this was not going to be as serious as everybody thought. Well, much is different. And then we got to the coronavirus. March 19th. I'm going to stop right there because that's where we really got to things. And things started making a significant change. A lot of stuff happened. It sucks that we got to this point. But, what are you going to do? I hate the fact that we've gone through all this. There's a few things I got to say that actually were pretty good that happened that I can't complain about too much. But nevertheless, here we are. We move along. And we'll talk about in the next few weeks how the show has kind of been able to persevere through all of this. And I have to give a lot of credit to all the organizations that are finding their way back. Because right now we're at the end of the year. MLW has come back. NWA's finally come back. Ring of Honor has come back. All the major wrestling promotions. Impact Wrestling has been around has not stopped. Neither has AEW or WWE to their credit. Unlike other sports organizations that had to really manage and work around. All the wrestling companies, they did their best to keep going. I give them all the credit in the world. I am so thankful for wrestling for being around this year. Because if I didn't have wrestling, I don't know how this pandemic I could have lived through it. I'm being serious. Maybe I'm just that big of a fan of wrestling. That's why I keep doing this show for all these years. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you for listening in, catching the show as you always do. I'm so thankful for all of you catching the show as you always do. Remember, go ahead and check out the website, WrestlingIsReal.com. I'll probably going to do a post show for NXT War Games coming up this weekend. NXT TakeOver War Games coming up in Orlando at the Capitol Wrestling Center. The matches we have scheduled at this point is War Games matches for the men and women. Team Shotzi versus Team Candice. Shotzi Blackheart, Ember Moon, Rhea Ripley, and Io Shirai versus Candice LeRae, Dakota Kai, Raquel Gonzalez, and Toni Storm. I'll take the Candice team to win. Undisputed Era of Adam Cole, Kyle O'Reilly, Roderick Strong, and Robbie Fish will take on Pat McAfee, Pete Dunne, Danny Burch, and Oney Lorcan. I think the Pat McAfee team will probably win that. Leon Ruff, who's the new NXT North American champion, will take on Johnny Gargano and Damian Priest. And Leon Ruff just won this, so we'll just kind of work with that. And we'll expect him to go and hold on to that belt right now for the time being. Dexter Lumis versus Cameron Grimes in a strap match. Again, they did like a House of Horrors match before. I didn't watch that. I'll take Dexter Lumis to win. And Timothy Thatcher versus Tommaso Ciampa in a singles match. I'll take Tommaso Ciampa to win. So I'm still surprised Timothy Thatcher is in NXT. But I digress. Probably the two of the Rascals have made their way. I think it was Desmond Xavier and Zachary Wentz have now signed with the company, so we'll see them at some point, I'm sure. They're not going to hold them off TV for too long, I would imagine. But anyway, we'll leave it there. Come back to another Wrestling is Real podcast later this weekend. We'll do one for back to you for that, because wrestling needs us.
Thank you for listening to the Wrestling is Real podcast. Follow the King of Podcasts on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and on Facebook at Wrestling is Real. Subscribe to the Wrestling is Real podcast through all major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Spreaker, and iHeartRadio. You can also look for episodes on his YouTube channel, youtube.com/JBRASCO951. You can find all this information and more by going to the website, WrestlingIsReal.com.